We're live.
Hello. Welcome. It is Monday night, Generational
It's a federal
Change.
holiday.
It is Labor Day. Happy Labor Day. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
And so
And
we are
we're
going to be
working when
doing
we
Labor
shouldn't
Day.
be. We're working when we shouldn't
We're
be.
not exactly labor.
Well, we support labor.
We absolutely support labor, but we're
100%.
not, we don't have the same plight as labor. Like our
No.
lives are not that. So we are going to be doing a Labor Day special. We have several people coming on, 3 different guests. We're going to have a good discussion, 2 representatives of 2 of the current strikes that are going on right now in the country. We have somebody coming on from Nabisco, which is happening now in 5 states. I think it's bakeries, 3 bakeries in 5 states that are have strikes going on through Nabisco.
Yeah, they're really, they're again, it's inspiring to see how many people are willing to step up and say, yeah, we're not taking this anymore. And the fact that it's on Labor Day and the fact that I think 11 million people or something lost their benefits today.
Is that,
yeah?
Well,
ironic,
I mean, the
right?
timing of,
of course.
And then we're also
Else would
having
have happened.
somebody on from the coal miners union, because the coal miners in Alabama have actually been on strike now for about 6 months.
And they were just in New York City protesting in front of BlackRock, which was pretty, an auspicious moment.
And this is something that when you're not in a coal town or a mining town, you really don't hear about their issues. You just don't. You just don't hear about it. It's not something, it's not like other industries where you hear about what goes on there. I just think we don't really hear what goes on with that. So
it's not entirely surprising, but then again, corporate media does not want people to know that there are labor movements happening around the country.
There are so many strikes right now, people.
Yeah.
It is really happening.
That's where More Perfect Union will be able to share with us just how many strikes are actually going on. It's tons.
Yes, we will also be having on Jordan Zakarin
and Josh Miller, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. From More Perfect Union.
Yeah.
And so that, that'll be good. And we can ask them all sorts of questions in general about what is going on. We are absolutely seeing a labor uprising in this country. We're doing everything we can to facilitate that and fan those flames as much as possible. And but you're not hearing about it. For sure, you're not hearing about it.
Wish there was an event here today. I mean, there really wasn't. I mean, we looked for stuff in South Florida. Unfortunately, there wasn't that. There's always the Labor Day picnic that takes place. That got canceled because of COVID.
I feel like I should be wearing my yellow vest.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I guess.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to. I'm feeling inspired. I need my yellow vest. I have. Okay, so this is from.
Well, if you're inspired, I guess I should be inspired.
You don't have to always do what I do, but I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'll specifically not do it just because I'm copying you.
You don't have to.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, they sent us too. This is from Real Progress in Action. They sent this to us for the Yeah.
You need your red beret too.
I know, but the problem is, and as much as I love my red beret, the red beret is made by women who live in Oregon. They don't live in Florida. Exactly. The red beret ladies would not be able to exist in Florida. In Florida, we will have to be red cap ladies.
And those berets definitely keep you cold. Warm.
Oh, warm. I'm a sweater naturally. Like I run warm. So for me, it is kind of harsh, but I look forward to wearing it when we go protest in Albany and we go stir up some trouble there.
Brenda, we will definitely communicate with Jolie at some point again. We are very happy that she is now the Treasury.
Yes.
Treasurer Secretary.
Treasurer Secretary, which really,
is the VP. It's basically.
But it's really I think that's a key more important role. I do, especially because what they're dealing with is the money issues and mismanagement of funds and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good position. But yeah, we could have Jolie back on and talk about that.
And they were great, and she is great. And obviously, we're very happy that she is making some serious headway. And we even discussed the other day having a sort of a split within the elected branch could actually be a good thing. So we'll see what ends up happening. Clearly, yeah. Okay. Clearly, that would be a case of, usually very often when it comes to labor, even in the acting world, you want to be able to have multiple voices at the table. So hopefully Fran and Jolie get along just fine. Ray,
I'm sure there'll be rumors.
We are with you 100%. We wish there were more major things happening in Florida.
But remember, Florida is a right to work state, and we are not a bastion of labor activity.
We are not.
And that of course, this is sort of the situation that we have here.
It is. It's a pretty big deal. Tony, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, Puerto Rico.
So labor obviously is a very important topic.
Oh, I hope they're going to fare well this hurricane season. I hope you all fare well in Puerto Rico. No, because people who live there know, like we know, it's like Russian roulette every year. It's every year. It's like you just sit there and you hope that you could get through hurricane season without a big one coming and sitting on top of you.
Well, speaking of Russian roulette, that's what we hope. That's what we have to deal with here in Florida. And it isn't just with the weather. It's also with this pandemic.
So, focus on Florida.
Needless to say, we will not be able to shake this problem for quite some time. And I think the best place to start with our focus on Florida stories, of course, is Florida is named the top travel destination.
But this is what I am referring to as Florida COVID corner, because now, I mean, we can't just have one or two. We have to have three. There are 3 Florida stories on COVID. So it's just going to be its own little segment now.
Yeah. And since a lot of people want to blame the governor, and there's no question that his anti-mask mandate BS is completely asinine, makes no sense whatsoever. You're not going to stop the spread of COVID in the most traveled state in the country.
Right. So Florida is named top travel destination for this Labor Day weekend.
And that's usually not the case because it's still the summer here. You know, usually you have to worry about everybody coming down here once the weather starts to get cold up north. But as you can see, it already is a problem. I don't know how many people actually know that Walt Disney World is the most visited place in the world. It's number 1.
Right. So we're seeing this huge, this is, what I was going to say was I have the stats on this, but you can talk about your.
Well, when you have so many people, not just in Orlando, but also in Miami, and then you have all of the major universities. We've got a lot of major universities.
I think they were looking at the amount of scheduled flights coming into Orlando and Tampa specifically were just off the charts. So definitely not above their highs, but definitely bigger than last year.
Yeah. And in that case, you know, when we talk about centralized planning versus decentralized planning, when everybody is more or less converging on specific areas, it's just naturally going to
We're one
spread.
of those areas. So point being that even though we do have a governor that is mismanaging this and creating more chaos and more problems, that is all true. Florida is uniquely susceptible.
Yes.
That's what we're saying. It's sort of a perfect storm of a problem.
Which is, of course, why we have 15 South Florida district school staff members who actually passed. And I believe
that's only Miami-Dade.
That's only Miami-Dade.
That's Miami-Dade County alone. Within the first 10 days of school, 15 South Florida district staff members, and it says South Florida, but it really is, it's only Miami-Dade, died in the first 10 days of school, 15.
Yeah. Which is amazing.
That's just, it's unbelievable.
And again, what I have said repeatedly when it comes to this virus is that if you haven't had it and you are vulnerable in any way health-wise, if you do not exercise regularly, if you do not eat well, if you're not in great shape, if you don't take multivitamins, get the vaccine. Like this is not a joke. It's just not. And as much as people want to throw their arms up and say, oh, everybody's got to do this, that, and the other thing. No, you know, we're not, you can't force people to do it. But at some point you have to say, how much more risk are you willing to take? And of course, when it comes to our kids, then it opens up a whole other can of worms.
And then we do have a doctor in Florida that has, and she's in Miami, actually, I believe.
And your husband, who is a doctor, to be in favor of what this doctor said, which is interesting.
Oh, that only saying vaccinated patients.
Yes. Well, actually,
so she's in South Miami. She says that she's largely treating unvaccinated people in person. She's still willing to treat her unvaccinated people
via Zoom or online.
Right.
Which again, you know, you're still treating them. You're just not seeing them in person.
You know, this of course brings up the issue is this violation of her Hippocratic oath? And she says not, but you know what? I don't know that it is because she said, this is what this doctor says. The Hippocratic Oath is very science-based. I am following the science. I'm applying this to the benefit of the sick. And, you know, I kind of agree with that, you know, and I'm not in favor of mandates. People know that I am not in favor of mandates, but
also you have to have people have discretion.
And this is her private practice. This is her private practice. She can do Jason has had to fire patients for things other than this before, you know, sometimes patients have got to go.
It is what it is. You know, we're not going to again, this is the whole thing about, when you talk about freedom and liberty, well, the doctor has the freedom and because it's not like it's only one doctor. There's plenty of doctors that are out there, and they have the ability to make that decision about whether or not that particular doctor wants to serve.
Yeah.
And you could always go to another doctor because not everybody's going to do it. But I do think that some people will be inspired by the fact that, her health concern is obviously a big deal. But with that said, a lot of people are circling Florida as a place where they really want to focus in terms of the elections next year.
And a lot of people are not so wanting to get involved financially in Florida politics. A lot of big Democratic donors are really holding back right now, and they don't see it.
Where the governor's race goes is where the Senate race goes. That's just how it goes in Florida. And one of the things that we didn't really talk about, because we're both in agreement that we believe that Governor DeSantis is going to be reelected, and this was an issue that we never even addressed, is the issue of money. Wait,
I have it here. How much money he has?
The Trump donors are now moving into his column.
Ron DeSantis is sitting on more than $52 million
right now, over a year away from the election.
So, and the fact that the big Democratic donors are already questioning whether or not they want to invest in this election cycle, they kind of look at Florida in some ways as a lost cause. They saw that for the last election, Florida didn't even matter. It didn't cost Joe Biden the election. I think that, and this is what this article from The Hill is talking about, that they are not as focused on Florida as they have been in the past. And, if I were advising them, I would say I don't think I would either, because quite honestly, as to those two races for governor and Marco Rubio's seat, there's really not anybody that has a strong enough chance that for somebody looking at it from an investment perspective, where it would be a valuable return on investment.
And we really like Alan Ellison, who's running for the Senate
like Alan
on the Democratic side. The only problem is, the Democratic establishment is already trying to cast him aside in favor of Val Demings. So that's not good. And I think a lot of people are just recognizing the shortcomings that exist in this very important state. But again, that's just really more or less speaking to what's going to ultimately end up happening. Yeah, I see. And so the final story, and and for those of you who don't follow our show, we do like to joke about the fact
Florida
is there's always a Florida story to share.
Okay, so this, and I don't know that my girl's watching me right now, but if Alyssa's watching me, she'll appreciate this. This is a Golden Girls scenario gone very awry. So
Golden Girls from Florida, of course.
Golden Girls were in Florida. So this is a woman who is 76 was stabbed to death after a fight with her roommate, who, by the way, was 79. These two women got into a fight. It does not say about what. I can't imagine what in the world it was about, but she stabbed her to death, 79, 76. And sometimes I look at my friends and I think, yeah, maybe I've just had enough. And
two grannies going at it.
Two grannies going at it.
Yeah,
but with knives. It's anyway. So and this took place. This is in Orange County, so middle of the state.
What we always like to say is that if it could happen anywhere, it could happen.
Oh yeah.
So if there's a story you are expecting to hear,
we have to have a Florida.
Well, and I've said we've gotten to the point now where so much of what takes place in Florida becomes one of those things where you hear a crazy story on TV or the news or anything, and your instinct is to say, "Did it happen here?"
Well, no one's ever surprised.
No.
When the lunatic is from Florida, when the crazy story happens here, nobody's ever surprised. That's the thing. If it happened somewhere else, then maybe people would be surprised.
If Florida wasn't such a cowboy state and had so many of the problems that it has, you never know what might ultimately end up happening.
But what we don't have
is we do not have a strong labor movement in the state of Florida.
We don't have it. We have a right to, Florida's a right to work state. How many are there? Do you know how many of the states?
I know that I think we got a comment here from, let's see.
But
from Amman,
whatever it is, I'm sure we're back. Okay.
Wisconsin is also a right to work state. But the labor movement is much stronger in Wisconsin than it is in this state.
Is it?
As far as I know, yes. As far as I know.
I think that a lot of it also has to do with the types of industries. Some tend to be much more, we have a lot of, down here, you have a lot of people in hospitality, and you have a lot of like gig workers, and you have a lot of people that are not, our industry is tourism. I just think certain industries lend themselves more to organization than others.
Well, we want to have this conversation.
But Florida is a train wreck as far as labor is concerned. And we're like I said, we're doing whatever we can to facilitate that. But interestingly, and I told you this, this week is the 100-year anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain, which is the largest union labor uprising in this country. And yet another thing we never learned about, just sort of like the Tulsa massacre, 100-year anniversary of that, Memorial Day. Never heard about that before a few years back.
And we absolutely agree that the PRO Act would have significant impact on Florida because it would eliminate right-to-work laws. And that's the biggest reason why we are strong advocates of it.
Yes,
that is
very
something
much
we
so.
desperately need. But as many of you
that's
know,
a game changer for us.
We have been strong advocates. More than anything else, we believe that the future of progressivism rests in a non-corporate, non-partisan labor movement, and an organization that has been doing an amazing job of really highlighting that over the past several months has been More Perfect Union. They are an amazing group. They have been closely monitoring all the different strikes that have been going on all over the country, particularly the Nabisco workers strike in Oregon, as well as the coal miners strike in Alabama.
They're putting out really good content.
They really are.
They're putting out some really good content covering the labor issues.
So if there's anybody that we would endorse, if you will, or recommend that you check out, and you're now going to learn more about them, Jordan Zakarin, I believe I say it right? Zakarin, and Josh Miller-Lewis from More Perfect Union. We welcome you guys to Generational Change, first and foremost. And in addition, we are going to have two amazing representatives of probably the two most recognizable strikes going on in the country
Current
right
strikes
now.
Right now. Well, there's a lot. We're just not hearing about them.
But we're going to hear more about them now. So Mike Burlingham from the BCTGM.
Say that like 10 times.
Oh, well, yeah, but
I never can say it. It's in Bakers. It's with the Bakers.
Confectionery,
it's in
Tobacco,
Nabisco.
and Grain Millers Union.
That's good.
I think I got that right.
Nabisco.
Mike, welcome to Generational Change. And finally, we have Brian Sanson, the Secretary Treasurer of the I'm gonna botch that. United Mine Workers. Thank you, Jen. Scoop that one up for me real nice. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Generational Change.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, we need more women in the league. I think I'm sorry not to play identity politics or anything. I'm feeling very female right now, but this is really cool. We try to be as current and relevant as we can, like with content. And I love that it's Labor Day, and that you were all able to be here. That's really amazing. It's very helpful to us, actually. It's really helpful because you're going to be able to explain things that we can't explain.
Absolutely. And I think the best place to start, let's start with Mike, if you would like to share, what's going on with your union, if you could get people up to speed with the Nabisco workers on strike, what you're fighting for, and ultimately, where you're hoping this leads as we go forward.
Sure, absolutely. Well, here in Portland on Tuesday, we're going to be entering our 5th week of being on strike. We went out on strike at our location on August 10th. We were followed by the other bakeries and distribution centers that are all on the same contract as we are. So this is a nationwide strike. We have bakeries in Portland, in Chicago, and in Richmond, Virginia. And then we have distribution centers in Georgia, just outside Chicago, and also Aurora, Colorado. So the reason why we're going on strike is because our parent company, Mondelez, isn't coming to the table in good faith. They are rather coming to the table to give their list of demands and stating that they need to have these things in order to keep moving forward with production in the United States. They've had a history of closing down bakeries and shipping that work down to Mexico. They have 2 plants down there. One of them is a super plant. And there's always the looming threat that they could close any one of us at any time. They did so with 2 bakeries this year, Atlanta, Georgia, and also in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Collectively, that's 1,000 workers just this year that are out of work. Also, with the downsizing of Chicago and the closure of Philadelphia, that's another 1,000 jobs right there. So in the last 7 years, we've gone from 3,000 BCTGM members down to 1,000. So the company is basically telling us we need to accept their demands, or we could face losing our job.
Yeah, no, and we'll get into like specifics because I know there's something going on there with the retirement plan and that there's certain particular issues to that. But let's talk. I want to kind of talk coal mining because it's, you know, I find it infinitely, no offense, more dangerous and more health issues, and it really freaks me out just the idea in general. But I know that in Alabama the coal miners have been on strike. It seems like, has it been 6 months? Is that how long it's been?
Yeah, we went on strike April 1st is when the strike began.
What's been your experience, Brian? Obviously, we were fortunate enough to see the protest in New York City in front of BlackRock's building highlighted by Status Quo. But obviously, what's been going on, the conditions for your particular union, for the United Mine Workers, if you can shed some light on, just as Mike just did, where your union is at, what the current status is, and you know why you currently are striking as you guys are.
Sure. This is one of the largest strikes we've had in the last 20 years. We have, and it's been one of the most violent strikes. We've had our picketers continuously targeted by employer, whether it be replacement workers or bosses. They're just running into these folks with their cars in a very dangerous manner. The National Labor Relations Board has not, we filed multiple complaints and they haven't picked up any of them. The state police basically work for the company. They bring the replacement workers in every day. They move our folks away. We've got county judges that have put injunctions in place on people just doing, you know, they're exercising their basic freedoms under the Constitution. And the county sheriffs down here, quite frankly, are just, you know, they're just down there intimidating the workers on the line. What we're trying to do is have the same or substantially the same contract as they have at every other coal mine in the United States. And this company, who's getting $350 a ton for their coal, you know, refuses to pay their workers more than, you know, what they pay contractors to come in and do this work. We just entered into a contract with one of the larger employers down here in Alabama, Peabody Coal Company. We'll explain that contract tomorrow. We're just trying to get Warrior Met to sit down and negotiate something similar to get these folks back to work. But they really just, they have no intentions of meeting with them. The negotiations aren't meaningful. They won't provide information to us. And this is just old-fashioned union busting in the South. This is what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question that this has been one of those cases where it's now really starting to come to light just how difficult it is to collectively bargain in the United States. Labor has been crushed for decades and decades, and we are very happy to have both Josh Miller-Lewis and Jordan Zakarin on our show this evening to talk about what you guys have been doing with More Perfect Union, because you really have been highlighting the struggles of workers throughout the United States. So whoever would like to jump in.
We're trying to highlight it, but you guys are actually doing a really good job and your content is really good. So, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, we launched in February, I guess it was, around the Amazon union effort in Alabama. Saw a lot of the same stuff that Brian's talking about with the way that they use the police down there to help stop the union. But you know, the goal here, myself started it along with Thad Shakir, who is Bernie's campaign manager. I worked for Bernie for the last 5 years. Nico Pitney, who was over at Now This before. And, you know, the goal was out of the Bernie Sanders campaign to continue to highlight the stories of working people all over the country as something that obviously, you know, working for Bernie, seeing every day, like it just is not happening. And when it does happen, it's often not through the lens of working people, it's through a corporate media lens. And understanding that it's really important if we want to see the sort of political change that we are trying to create, to have media that is sympathetic to and interested in empowering working people. And so that was really the idea behind More Perfect Union in the first place. And I think that over the last 6 months, like because of the work of Jordan and so many other people, we have been able to, shed light on a lot of the labor struggle that's happening in this country, especially after the pandemic, in a way that other people haven't been, and bringing, I think, a different lens and a different specific mission to the work than other people in the media are.
I just want to ask you, because I've been on your site and I've seen your stuff, and I think it's great, but are you guys a PAC? Are you a media organization? Like what is More Perfect Union?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit media organization. We're a 501c3. We're interested in telling stories through a journalistic lens, but we have a very clear mission. Like we want to see the labor movement succeed. We want to see progressives succeed in Congress and at the state level. And our goal is to do journalism with that specific mission in mind.
So people, you just heard that it's a 501c3. That means your donations are tax deductible.
That's so
we can't offer that here, but we can forward you to people who we can.
Jordan, if you can shed some light on your experience so far, what it's been like being with More Perfect Union, and perhaps some of the hopefully the short and long-term goals of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, so I spent years working in more corporate media. Working for the last place I worked for full time was NBC Universal, right? And a lot of good folks there, and a lot of people trying to work hard and tell stories. But like Josh said, this is a different ballgame. This is actually caring about and trying to tell the stories of not that hard to find once you start looking. People who are being exploited or screwed over or just taken advantage of every single day, and to the point where it just seems normal, and that's what you're supposed to go through. I think what the through line that we're noticing is that whether it's Nabisco, Frito-Lay, Tesla, all these places, Warrior Met, just these companies kind of all do the same thing, and there's such a fractured world, and people don't talk about it because these things don't get covered. And once you start doing that, it becomes very clear that what the patterns are. It becomes very clear who's doing these things, and it's all the same playbook, and it's all the same people being taken advantage of. And so it's been really invigorating working with people who care so much, who know so much about it. I'm coming to it, like I said, from a different sort of, not lens, but from a different sort of experience. And so getting to really learn very quickly, how to work in this world, and also, using whatever journalistic experience I have to kind of amplify these stories. We're not making anything up. We're not making them sexier. They're just often gut wrenching, often, frustrating, often, like sometimes fun, right? There's, people just telling their stories. It's uplifting and enraging at the same time. And so I think that the moral of the story is listen more, and look for these stories. And there's way too many of them. It would be great if the future of More Perfect Union was that we didn't have to exist because labor won and people were being taken advantage of. Although I like my job, so I hope it continue to exist.
Well, you could still report on labor. It just doesn't have to be bad stories, like it
Right.
you could actually have, I mean, I don't know though, probably in places like Finland, labor stories probably aren't so sexy because they just pay their people. So they don't have that.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to highlight, obviously, is what happened with the Frito-Lay workers' strike in Kansas, and then, of course, what was initially a failed attempt in attempting to unionize in Bessemer, Alabama, with the Amazon workers, but that doesn't seem to be stopping others from attempting to do the same, such as Chris Small's efforts in Staten Island, and I'm sure that is popping up all over the country. Mike and Brian, if you can jump in and share your thoughts on, even though would you call it a monumental victory for the Frito-Lay workers, but it was a victory nonetheless, and what that does to empower more labor movements around the country, in particular.
Yeah, how do you feel like inspired by other things going on around the country? Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really amazed to see what's going on in the past several months. And I've been saying that this has been a boiling pot in our country for quite some time. And so it's gotten to a point, people are getting fed up. They see the corporate greed, especially in an industry like I work in, snack foods, this last year with the pandemic, they've done phenomenal. Frito-Lay, Mondelez, Nabisco, they're all doing very well for themselves. And so Mondelez itself is making record profits. And just in the last 12 months, ending on June 30th of this year, they made over $4 billion in profits. They're making acquisitions of other companies. And so, for them to come to the table and saying that in order for them to continue to be successful, we need to have you accept takeaways. It's not something we're going to accept. And there's a lot of people out there who are saying the same thing. Enough is enough.
Brian, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and this is something that we talked about when we met with the firefighters union, is the health aspects of what they do and the amount of, cancer that they're exposed to and the different things that they're exposed to. And I know that with coal mining, that it's not just dangerous, but there's major health hazards. Could you talk a little bit about what is your union do as far as health benefits? What are you offered? Are you constantly having to beg for any sort of coverage? What is your existence down there as in coal mining?
Great question. We have been through a series of bankruptcies since 2013. Most of the major coal employers in the country have gone bankrupt. So the first thing they do in bankruptcy is shed their obligations to their retirees. These retirees are some of the sickest folks in the country. They have black lung, coworkers pneumoconiosis. Warrior Met, formerly Jim Walters, 2,500 retirees, gone with the bang of a judge's gavel, never to be seen again. Pensions for 80,000 retirees, bang with the judge's gavel, gone. So these workers continue to work underground and continue to suffer the same illnesses and black lung, with not only no longer having the promise of future retirement benefit, but with massively expensive out-of-pocket costs, $12,000 out-of-pocket costs for some of these families with these conditions. We're fortunate at the mine workers where we're able to pay our strikers health benefits when they're on strike. And as the person who sees those checks wrote, it's a lot of money. We've got a very sick population, and it's just day one they cut people's they cut all the miners off on day one, regardless of the new legislation with the pandemic, how they were supposed to provide COBRA benefits. That people with cancer, just day one, cut off their benefits. So the workers down here are really struggling with that portion of it. They're sicker than the average U.S. citizen because of the conditions they work in.
Of course.
And that's a great transition, Brian. And this is to all of you guys. We are obviously huge advocates of Medicare for all. The ability to have a universal healthcare system would benefit the labor movement as much as any sector of our society, because of not having to worry about collectively bargaining for your health every year. It would also allow you to make more money at your job because it's less that you would have to negotiate into your contract. And if you could talk about the importance of being able to have that, and the growth of the labor movement, I think coincides with a lot of the issues that the progressive movement has been focused on. Medicare for all obviously being, certainly one of the top of the list, along with the Green New Deal. But certainly when it comes to healthcare, of all the things that I think would significantly benefit the movement as a whole, unquestionably, having a universal healthcare system would really help the labor movement exponentially, as far as we can see.
Anybody?
Go for it, Jordan.
Oh, it's I grew up with health issues and multiple heart surgeries and whatnot, and I've been lucky to have healthcare. I grew up, my dad was able to have healthcare through his job, and I've been able, it certainly shaped my career, both what I'm fighting for, and imagine if you didn't have to take a job that was crappy because you needed healthcare, right? Imagine if you were able to negotiate for more. You can say it in the same way we're seeing people leave their jobs now, right? We're seeing people just walk off. We did a story on Dollar General folks, people at Burger King, all these places. It's like, I don't need this. And imagine if people could do that anywhere, anytime, because they had healthcare. And so I think that alone, like you said, would be a huge boon to the labor industry, to labor unions. Like that freedom, that sort of ability to not be held captive in a lot of ways, even for people who are not part of unions, right? People who are not part of unions could negotiate better and have a lot more power with their employers. So I think that beyond it being the right thing to do, it would be a huge boon for workers in unions, not in unions, and everywhere.
Yeah, it's when we spoke with the firefighters, one of the things that stood out to me is that they actually have in their collective bargaining agreement, that their insurance covers these certain cancers, but not these certain cancers, right? So there is literally a list of the cancers that their insurance will cover and the list that it won't. And oh, well, look at that. The ones that it doesn't are ones that they're particularly susceptible to. So just this sort of nickel and dime nonsense with people that are essential workers. And, and when you're talking about people coal for sure, and personally in the snack industry, these are essential things.
Yeah.
These are things that keep everything kind of circulating. So,
Brian, hop in with, especially working in coal, I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get good medical care in the United States as your average citizen, but throw on top of that all the dust and coal dust these guys breathe every day. We're just not as healthy as the normal population. Our retirees aren't as healthy. It's not because we don't take care of ourselves. It's just the nature of the work we do.
sure.
It's unfortunate. I'm sure that there have been mortality studies done by these different operators. That obviously, it has been a male-dominated industry, and our mortality rate is significantly, higher than people in other industries.
Yeah, it's definitely dangerous. It's definitely considered dangerous profession. I was just going to ask Josh and Jordan, what you've noticed in your stories and what you've been covering in terms of anything that is hopeful or promising. I seem to feel like we're seeing more organizing, like we are seeing that. And, I'm hoping that you guys could shed a little bit more light on what is really happening out there that the mainstream media is not covering.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. We did a story a few months ago with Collectivo Coffee, and they're based in Wisconsin and Illinois, and they were trying to form a union. It's a really revolutionary union, and they won. But the union is not just baristas; it's people in the bakery, it's delivery workers. Everyone is in one union. 300 people, I think, in the bargaining unit. And, they were up against enormous challenge. There's no union like it in the United States. And, obviously they wanted to change conditions at Collectivo, but there was also this goal of inspiring workers around the country in similar positions. And they won recently. They won by 7 votes. And Jordan and I had a conversation the other day with Starbucks workers who are trying to form a union in Buffalo. And it's exactly what the Collectivo workers wanted. They wanted to sort of say, we can do this here. You can form a union at Starbucks. You can form a union at Target. You can form a union in other places if we can do it here. And it's happening all over the country now. People have been inspired by what Collectivo did. They've been inspired by what happened in Bessemer. And people are starting to try to change conditions and to start unions and to stand up and fight back against exploitative corporations. And I think it's just and as a result of Starbucks, you're going to start to see what they're doing in Buffalo. They're getting calls from workers at Starbucks all over the country saying, how can we start a union at our location? And so I think you're going to start to see sort of a ripple effect coming out of the pandemic of more and more people being inspired by other workers who are standing up and fighting back. And I think you're seeing it too in terms of workers who are quitting their job even. It's hard to start a union, but people who are saying, I'm sick of this. I'm not going to take these sorts of conditions. I'm not going to take these low pay and long hours anymore. I'm going to find a better job. I'm going to do something. I'm going to get paid the way I should be paid. And you're starting to see that all over the country right now.
Yeah, I would also say that because of folks like Mike and Brian and people who are on the picket lines and, busting their butts to do all these things, a lot of the time just they weren't being covered, right? Like there might be a story in the Washington Post once in a while or on TV, and a lot of times that's because the local news has made a big deal of it, but no one else is paying attention. And they're doing the hard work, and I think for us it's by shining a light on the conditions that are happening at Nabisco or that happen at Frito-Lay, the hours that people are forced to work and the pay they're getting. Yeah, it's certainly the fact that people in the coal industry are just being like Brian said, just having their retirements taken away, having their lives taken away. I think once people are aware of it, I've been really just inspired, and people are pissed. People who are just not working in any of these industries, they had no idea. And I think more than anything else, it's making people aware of what's going on. And we are definitely a divided country, and there's a lot of people who are maybe not the most altruistic, but even a lot of people there, they don't like their bosses. They don't like the way people are, they're treated, and they don't like to see other people be treated that way. And so I think, more than Josh made a great point about how other workers are being inspired by this, by Collectivo, Starbucks is going to inspire people. That's happening. And I think, we're seeing 77% of people 18 to 34 already approve of unions. And that's before, all this coverage getting out there. And so I think that making people aware of what's happening, and only being able to do that because of the great work that Mike and Brian and everyone else on the picket lines are doing, I think I've been uplifted, and sometimes there's tough stories to tell because you see people going through so much, but just the sheer anger we're seeing in response on behalf of workers, on behalf of working people, on behalf of union members, I think points to hopefully a sea change in this country.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. We had a guest on recently who is on the political right, and she had a lot of great ideas, but was basically just focused solely on the idea of entrepreneurship. And it's that's not how the country works. I mean, it is a part of it for sure, and it matters. But we're an eclectic bunch. We all have something to bring to the table that's of value, and the labor movement is as valuable as anything that we have. And so, even though we don't, again, we are fiercely nonpartisan, but we do believe that the PRO Act is an absolute good of a piece of legislation, especially because it deals with the right to work law issue, especially in a state like Florida.
Yeah.
There was almost no Labor Day events or anything of protest here in the state. And a lot of it has to do with that law. So, Mike, if you'd like to jump in first, your thoughts on potentially having a piece of legislation like the PRO Act that is about improving collective bargaining power for workers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that can benefit us all, the country as a whole. The right to work states have been something that has hurt this country. And, we have corporations that are in the pockets of politicians that are pushing these things through. These are the things that need to change in this country. Like we've been talking about, that there's been a shift that we're seeing. People who are inspired. We have people here in Portland who have come by. They see us on TV that we're on strike, and they want to learn more information about how they themselves can form a union at their place of employment. So, having something like that would be very important to us.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, for us, it's as a right to work state, it's a game changer for us, for sure.
Right.
Well, because and again, Josh and Jordan, one of the things that you have been highlighting so well is all of the different strikes that have been happening. But there is talk of doing a general strike on October 15th. And we're kind of curious as to, is that something
nobody has claimed that yet? I saw it out there. It was mentioned. I've gone to it says October strike, the website, but yet nobody seems to know anything about this. And I'm wondering if it's, potentially an opportunity to do something across the board.
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot of momentum that's being generated right now within the labor movement. And at some point it's going to come to a head where, if there's an opportunity to get 1 million people in the streets, then let's do it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's so much as a real general strike as much as a day, just some sort of solidarity in a day where let's not be spending money at these places. Let's not be, if everybody blacked out Amazon for an entire day, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as Mike and Brian can speak to better than anyone, there's an enormous amount of organizing and work that needs to go into mobilizing people and to take collective action. And so I think that the question is where I think you're right. There is this energy and passion that is bubbling up, not just in the labor movement, but amongst working people all over the country. But the question is, how do we turn that into something that can really create meaningful change? And I think that's where we need to both look to unions, but also maybe politicians who are going to step up and other leaders in the country, obviously, to sort of mobilize people and move that passion and energy towards something that's going to be productive.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, I think we need to create an opportunity for that, just as like a recognition, just as something's going on. It's another opportunity to bring attention to something.
To Brian and to Mike, Josh and Jordan, you guys are very well aware of the nihilistic movement that's been on the political left for quite some time. But I am curious from two union members' perspectives. We absolutely believe in the importance of an inside and outside strategy. I think you need street heat on the outside, but you absolutely need non-corporate representation on the inside. I don't think you can have one and not the other. If you guys can talk about the importance of elected representation and what that means in response to labor, I think that that is very important. And I think there's a lot of people, particularly on the political left, who are really discounting that right now. And we're really trying to do our best to dispel that myth. I think having non-corporate representation in the labor movement is absolutely essential. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Oh,
go for it, Brian.
Anybody? Yeah.
Our union, is local unions are autonomous. The entire union is run from the ground up. The officers of the union execute the will of the membership. And, you can't have a successful organization that dictates from the top down. It just doesn't work. I'm proud our union works the way it does. And most unions do. As far as, our Constitution prohibits membership to the Chamber of Commerce or certain other, corporate affiliates. So, we're not allowed to own stock in coal companies. These are things that the members of the United Mine Workers recognized 100 years ago that were bad things, and have maintained that ever since.
That'd be nice if our Congress had that. That would be nice if our representatives didn't have conflicts of interest and insider trading and all of that stuff. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Mike, would you say your union is the same? It's a bottom-up approach?
Absolutely. It's all very much ran locally in each location. And while there's several locations together on this one contract fighting, we take a lot of our cues from our international, but locally we do a lot of everything on our own from the membership. And we've been lucky in Portland. Just the climate here, I'd say, is a bit different than in most of the country. So we do get a lot of support. Portland is a big union town. So we get a lot of support from the other unions, also from politicians as well, from local districts to city, county, and state.
Oregon has a pretty good reputation overall, I must say. And, we happen to, one in particular, Senator Merkley, I think, does a very good job of highlighting labor needs. But again, I wish it wasn't such an anomaly.
No, but country. It is. We don't have that.
We certainly do need more of that.
Our representative sat down with a group of union people and said, I just don't know what your people's problem with trade agreements is.
All right. We always do super chats. We got to let Cheese Sandwich. He's a friend of or that person is a friend of the show. Don't know if it's a man or woman.
We don't know.
You don't know.
They.
But Cheese Sandwich wants to know what could be done to reform a labor union if it is very corrupt, tightly controlled, aligned with management, and constantly sells out its workers. Well,
we have that here in our Broward AFL-CIO.
Let's not dig too deep into what we have to deal with. But I think this is more of a general question in regards to is there any advice that you would give to other unions that may be facing a difficult situation in terms of getting into the streets and wanting to collectively bargain the way that you guys are bargaining, even though their infrastructure is top down and not bottom up?
Yeah, some unions do not work as democratically as others.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Does anybody have any experience with that? No.
I don't. I can only speak to what we do in the mine work.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. But, like I've seen this, we've seen this where the people that are in charge of the union are not working in the best interest of rank and file. We see it here. And honestly, I wish we had an answer to that, because that would actually help us very much as well.
Yeah, and I think that the states in question also have a lot to do with it. Depending on what, again, Oregon is a great state to collectively bargain in, but ironically, it's very difficult to collectively bargain in Alabama, and you guys are doing an amazing job, all things considered. And as we said before, the Amazon workers attempting to unionize in Bessemer, they may not have succeeded, even though we are kind of skeptical about the results, to say the least. But the fact that that had even come to pass, I think, is extremely inspiring for a state that has had a difficult time for quite some time in terms of collectively bargaining. And I think that that's something that is changing. Jordan and Josh, if you guys can speak, to what we were just alluding to, the importance of having more of this bottom-up approach rather than top-down approach, I think, is really what's going to cultivate even more labor support, even if you are a member of labor or you're just somebody who appreciates what workers are doing. And I think what you guys have been highlighting, as you alluded to, Jordan, before, there may be a lot of people who are either just not aware of what's going on, or they don't actually see it. And once they see it, then their attitude changes. Like, I wouldn't want to work in those conditions. Nobody should have to work like that. And so I do think that the structure of, perhaps some unions that aren't doing the bottom-up approach, that needs to become more of the mainstay. And I think we'll see that significantly more if any of these organizations, like, for example, what's going on in Staten Island, if they're able to break through with Amazon and form a union, I have no doubt that is going to be a bottom-up approach 100%. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, this message that, unions are controlled from the top, that they're controlled by outsiders. I mean, it's something that we saw in Bessemer. Amazon used it very effectively as a message to get people to vote against the union. And for people, especially young people who really didn't have a connection to unions, maybe didn't have a parent who'd ever worked in a union, they had never been exposed to a union, it was an effective message. And I think the labor movement has a lot of work to do as we try to unionize more places to convince people that that's not what a union is at all. Of course, it seems obvious to people who are in unions. They know that from experience. But to people who don't really know what a union is, I think this message that a lot of corporations use and Amazon use effectively, it's very effective in getting people to vote against it. They don't want some outsider to come in and take their money and tell them what to do and how to work. And obviously that's not what's going on, but it is a message that I think has been effective in places in killing unions. But I will say as well, we've worked with a whole range of people, told a whole range of stories. And even in places where unionization efforts haven't been successful, there are workers who are continuing to do everything they can to organize their workplace and stand up for other people, for their fellow workers. Even people who have been fired for unionizing are continuing to go back and do that work. And so I think, ultimately the success of the labor movement will come down to how hard working people fight to create unions and to stand up to corporations and to their bosses and to organize their fellow workers. And that's happening. There's no question that's happening all over the country. It's very difficult and it takes a long time to come to pass, but we're seeing it all over the place.
Yeah, I would say that, we clearly very much support unions. It's in our name, right? Like it's kind of our reason on the draw. Like we believe in to our core that, but not every organization, of course, is going to be perfectly run. Just look at the government, right? And if you want to look at organizations that are corrupt and bought and not looking out for the people that they're supposed to be helping, I think the much bigger problem is a government that is run by people who are kind of brazenly taking money and brazenly working against the interests of the people that they oversee or the people they're supposed to be helping. And so, it's very, like Josh said, it's often a straw man used to kind of discourage people from unionizing, but it doesn't discourage people, or it shouldn't discourage people from voting for president or voting for elected officials, right? You strive to make it better. And I think that if people need to organize, people need to keep working, and I also think they need to hold like the actual corrupt people accountable, and that's people in government. If there was a government and frankly a Democratic Party often that would respond to the needs to the desires of the people that they govern, it would be a whole lot easier to form unions. It would be a whole lot easier to have democracy in the workplace and amongst in the labor hall. And I think that the real people to hold accountable and the real people to call corrupt are not the ones who are working on behalf of workers. It's the people who are trying to hold them back in the halls of power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, another thing that we highlight on our show very strongly is the importance of recognizing that the biggest impediment to change, real change, especially for labor, is corporate special interest money. That is essentially what gets in the way. We know that the functioning interests of let's say Wall Street is a lot different than Main Street. So if you have shareholders and organizations like that don't want to see any of these workers unionize wherever it may be. Like you said, you highlighted the coffee company in Wisconsin that was successfully able to break through. And that could have tremendous impact on others who want to form a union and collectively bargain. Could you talk about, whoever wants to jump in, the importance of some of these other organizations, if they are successfully able to unionize, what that would mean for the labor movement as a whole going forward? Because as we talked about, there is momentum here.
Yeah. But it's still low. We're still low. What was labor in its highest back in whatever decade? And the participation rate was,
like a third of the working force.
Oh yeah. We're way low now, and we're starting to see like an uprising now. And we need to, my thought is more, the importance of independent media covering this and spreading it and getting it out there, because the problem is that the mainstream media is owned by the same corporations that are trying to squash the unions. So people like Jeff Bezos that does not want Amazon workers unionized is not going to be promoting it in the Washington Post that he owns. So this is the problem, is that we seeing ownership class is across the board the same people, and we're having to find all these like little loopholes to break through and get information out there. And that's what I see as the biggest problem.
I actually would like to ask both Mike and Brian, Perfect Union has done really an amazing job. There are others, but the fact that you guys really highlight the labor struggle.
And Jordan is too.
Yeah, Jordan with Status Quo does an amazing job. That's on the ground investigative journalism, which is an amazing job. Can you guys talk about the impact that independent media has had on spreading the word about what you guys are doing, and if that has shown positive returns for what you guys are trying to accomplish?
Are you noticing a difference?
Yeah, I would say for us, the independent journalism has been our best friend. The guys at More Perfect Union have done a phenomenal job at all of our locations, just highlighting the struggles of what we've gone through and why we're taken to the streets right now. And so we a tremendous amount of thanks to you guys for everything that you do. The other folks, Status Quo, I had the pleasure of talking with Jordan there a few weeks ago. These are all people who came on very early for us. There's a local publication here in Portland called Willamette Week. They were very early on the scene, and they've had continuing stories. So it wasn't a one and done type of thing. So for us, it's how we're still getting the word out there.
Yeah, it's pretty critical. Brian, are you noticing that at all down in Alabama?
Yes. If it wouldn't be for the independent journalists, we're getting almost zero media coverage here. It was the independent journalists that actually pushed this story to ABC, who finally ran something about it 4 or 5 months into the strike. But no, it's absolutely critical, and it's as critical now as it has when it started. And I don't know where we would be without independent journalism.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Jordan and Josh, do you find that now that there has been traction for your organization, that you're finding a lot more people on the ground are now trying to get you stories as often as possible to highlight any of the other labor struggles that are going on?
Yeah, I think it's still pretty new, and I came in here a bunch of 4 or 5 months after it started, and lucky to be part of a team that Josh has been and Baz and Nico have been leading, and like they had already from the start had such great contacts. People had already right away really getting in touch with them, it seemed. And I think even more since the last few months, I think the Frito-Lay and the Amazon and all those things, people recognizing, oh, this happens to me too. That's newsworthy. I think that I think a lot of times just assume that this crap happens in life and you just have to like eat it from your boss, right? And no, actually, that shouldn't be. That should be either illegal or should be something that shouldn't be happening in the workplace. And so I think that as people, I don't know, people feel like people have been so beaten down, and I feel like once people recognize that this stuff is not right, they start reaching out, they start talking, or folks like Brian and Mike reach out and say, hey, we have already taken a stand. Do you want to give us do you want to come take a look at it, or let us tell our story? And we get emails every day, and it's kind of like the lifeblood of doing this, because unfortunately it's such a fractured country and such a fractured it's there's no labor movement has been kind of beaten down, so it's hard to just have like one central repository of stories, as much as that would be a dream. But definitely, I think people reach out, and it's we're still a small team, but really proud of the stuff that happened before I came in, and since then as well.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing.
I think it's something that we may be in South Florida, and we are involved with local volunteer efforts. We do anything we can. We are doing what we can to help with the firefighters union. They have a couple of bills on Capitol Hill. We're trying to help with getting that taken care of, especially as we alluded to earlier with the cancer issues. I mean, again, that's just another example of the stupidity of our healthcare system. But there is no question that spreading the word and getting as many people informed about what is going on is how we're going to build a sustainable labor movement. Because let's be honest, corporate media is not going to cover this. It is completely juxtaposed to their financial interests. And so it really is on us to highlight this as much as we can. As we do wind down the conversation, I want to open it up first to Brian and then to Mike in regards to where the current strike stands and what people can do to get involved, to help.
Well, where can people send money? And the truth is, I know that especially when you're on strike for a long time, you're looking at 6 months, that there needs to be support networks. So if there's any way that people can help with your efforts, we'd be happy to put it up.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. If you go to our website, www.umwa.org, there is a place to specifically click to donate to the coal miners here at Warrior Met. Every penny that's donated goes to those coal miners.
Okay, people, that's really important, because we talk about wanting to have strikes and we want to support labor, but people need to be able to eat while they're on strike. So it's, I had this thought just now sitting here that we should have are there auxiliaries for unions? Do unions have auxiliary clubs? Because that's the kind of thing that would be a really cool thing to do. Do you know what I mean by that?
Not 100%.
You have no idea what that. So like an auxiliary club would be like, okay, so I'm not in your union, but we have a club that supports union efforts. So that sort of like, I don't know, like I'm not going to say the wives of people, but like, that's what they would call the auxiliary. All right, I'm kind of really dating myself, but that's like the idea of an organization that is doing things like raising money and doing support at a local level for their local union, as opposed to national. So that, you know what I'm saying? Like there would be auxiliaries for every union, sort of like, like the cheerleaders of the team kind of thing. But yeah. Well, I have these ideas.
I think More Perfect Union is a great cheerleader. And Mike, if you can share what's going on currently and obviously how people can help out in whatever capacity they can.
Sure. Well, we're still out on the street right now, so we're asking people while we are on the street, do not buy Nabisco products. If you want to expand beyond that, do not buy anything that says Mondelez. And ways that people can help out. Actually, as to what you were talking about, we do have those auxiliary groups that are cheerleaders, and they've been really. They're on the front line with us, but also they have been great on social media. Each location has a GoFundMe account. And
Okay.
so
Is there a place that links those at all? Can we send people somewhere to find that?
I'll find it and send it to you. Somebody just did a link tree, which has all the locations. I would say Portland was one of the first ones, since we were the first ones to go out on strike, and we've met our goal. We would certainly appreciate any more donations if you so choose. But the other locations are still trying to reach their goal. So I would say take a look at those locations first. Any donation is always appreciated.
Yeah. So, guys, and this is directed at one Graham Perlman who might be watching this. Stay away from the Oreos. They're not helping. So, there is that.
But they're so tempting, aren't they?
No, they're not.
I don't need any of that
no.
stuff, so you don't have to worry about me.
No, I'm good. I don't need to support that.
Josh and Jordan, if you could please highlight Perfect Union, and if
it's
people would,
more Perfect Union.
Perfect Union. Well, it's perfectunion.us. But
That's
nevertheless, if you can highlight how people can get involved and how they can help.
And where they can find you. Because I'm not even sure where I have found you. I know that it just comes up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the easiest place to find us is perfectunion.us. That's our website. You can see all of our social media from there. You can sign up for our email list as well there. And you can find us on Twitter. We're at More Perfect US. We're on YouTube as well. If you go to More Perfect Union, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you consume your news on social media, we're there. Please follow us, join the email list. And also, if you have a story that you want to tell, email us at stories@perfectunion.us. We will definitely respond to you. Can't promise we'll tell every story, but we will be in touch. We want to do as much as we possibly can to help people. And again, please donate to Mike, to Umwa, and to the Nabisco workers on strike. More than anything, that's the most important thing right now, is to help support all the people on strike all over the country who have been on strike for a very long time. So, and you can also find those strike funds. I think we've put them up on Twitter as well. If you look through our at More Perfect US Twitter account, you should be able to find those strike funds as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, for anybody searching for More Perfect Union, there is also a PAC that is not you guys, that is called that. And I'm going to say it's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here. So I just want to make people aware that there's a similar product out there called that, and don't send your money there. So just make sure that you have no, I'm serious. Because
I understand.
When I looked it up, I'm like, wait, this doesn't seem right. And then sure enough, it was not. But had I not known, I'm just saying, there are more than one Perfect Unions. Make sure you have the right one. That's my point.
No, 100%. And again, as we, this is supposed to be a very important day. Again, a lot of times we have a tendency to just recognize what's happening on this particular day. But the truth is, Labor Day is every day. We're not a strong labor country. We should be, and I think we could be. And I think having these types of conversations and getting the word out there, I think, is very important. It is extremely admirable, Brian and Mike, what your unions are doing, as are so many others around the country. I think that we're really trying to break that mindset of every, person for themselves. Looking out for, the community is something that is considered sort of still a foreign concept in many ways, but I think we're changing that.
It's really just the right thing to do.
It is.
I don't know why that's so complicated for people. I really don't understand why it's so complicated for people. It's like, didn't your people teach you this? It's the right thing to do. Why would you not want to treat people the way they should be treated? It's just not that complicated.
And very often, I think that's what ends up happening, because of the fact that these things are not highlighted in news. It's the forgotten people and the ones that aren't getting the attention. And so that once again brings us back to, you guys at More Perfect Union, you're really doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
And if we can provide, just a little bit of help in terms of amplifying that message
Absolutely.
and highlighting labor, that's what we're here for. And we're very grateful that you guys came on the podcast this evening. And we certainly hope to continue this conversation going forward. Mike Burlingham, Brian Sanson, and of course, Jordan Zakarin and Josh Miller-Lewis.
It's Zakarin, right?
It is, but it's
no, but I'm right?
And I'm wrong.
You are right. Yes.
Thank you. I live for that. I live for that, and I'm general when it comes to pronouncing names. I'm like batting 1,000. You are that. Just saying.
I didn't butcher it. At least
no, you didn't. You've had worse, but I'm just saying.
People have added lots of letters and different syllables, so it wasn't.
Yeah, but wait. What's your family background? Are you tribe?
Are you asking if I'm Jewish?
Yes.
Yes. Give me a second there. Yeah, it was invented at Ellis Island, so it's really
okay. Because I grew up with Zakarins, but they spell it with a CH.
Maybe
and so that's why I wasn't sure. And I come from like the mothership from North Miami Beach, so I'm like the mothership of tribe. So that's why I wasn't entirely sure. So yeah, I was curious.
Gentlemen, it really has been a pleasure, and we certainly look forward to continuing the conversation. Yeah. We're with you. Solidarity for labor, and let's continue spreading the word. And we certainly hope that the ultimate result of both of your respective strikes leads to a much better union contract and a much better labor movement overall. And of course, for Josh and Jordan, More Perfect Union, we'll keep spreading the word. Thank you so much for all the amazing work.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night, gentlemen. So, needless to say, it's always good anytime we can
I just love the union guys. It's honestly, it's like, because it makes me kind of feel like how I feel about the firefighters, especially when I'm thinking about people like coal miners.
Yeah.
I feel like these are people that put their lives on the line so that we could have conveniences that the people were in the areas wherein they live don't even get to have those conveniences. And then they get treated so absolutely horribly and get all these horrible diseases from what they're doing. And I don't know, it really bugs me. And it bothers me that this past week, people, was the 100-year anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain.
Blair Mountain.
The largest labor uprising in the United States history, also something I was never taught about, sort of like the Tulsa Massacre, which was this 100-year anniversary Memorial Day. And the conflict occurred in Logan County, West Virginia, as part of the Coal Wars, a series of early 20th century labor disputes in Appalachia. Up to 100 people were killed and many more arrested. For 5 days from late August to early September 1921, some 10,000 armed coal miners confronted 3,000 lawmen and strikebreakers called the Logan Defenders. So basically, nothing has changed. We have a coal miner sitting here, like basically begging for help for his colleagues who suffer from black lung disease, and they're getting beaten down by the local strikebreakers and law enforcement. It's just, we have not progressed very much, people.
No, we haven't. And again,
after 1 million rounds were fired, the battle ended, and the United States Army, represented by the West Virginia Army National Guard, led by McDowell County native, blah, 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 intervened. Yes. And so essentially the same thing still happening.
Of course.
Still happening. We have really not progressed very far, people. But I mean,
but I think we're turning a corner.
Well, we're turning a corner because we're just more and more people are knowing about it. This is one of those things where internet and social media is at our advantage.
Yes.
Because it's not only wealthy people that can afford to spread information. So that is something we can use to our advantage. But of course, we're also being harshly censored by Big Brother. Companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter do not want all this information out there because they're beholden to the same corporate interests that are running everything else. So we have certain limitations. We are being horribly censored. So if anybody cares to help and cares to support, be a Patreon. Or it's a patron at Patreon. Mm-hmm. Be a supporter. Get the Lulu sticker.
Get the awesome t-shirt.
Get the awesome t-shirt. I have the jersey on.
Superman.
I love this jersey. And every time I see that fist, okay, I have to tell you, okay? So it reminds me of Steve Grumbine. Isn't that his little symbol?
Course.
Isn't it from them? And you know, I really do love me some Steve Grumbine.
Well, the Real Progressives are a great group, and obviously MMT is something that we support. Because it's real.
Because it's real.
You
You
know.
know.
It's not like you can deny the fact that we're a currency issuer. We
So
are.
can we do my bootlicker?
I really think we should say that.
Why do
I
you?
don't know. I just feel like it's
But
not.
why?
I don't know. It's just not really part of the conversation.
It won't be then either. In fact, it's completely unrelated to the conversation on
we always
Thursday.
do it on Thursday. I don't know.
All right, whatever. I just feel like it's relevant.
It will be relevant then.
It's
I
still
promise.
it's all right, whatever. You're like such a like I feel like you're like a content commando.
I am not a content commando.
You are. You're
I don't
such
know,
like
I'm
you
just
try
not,
to be
in
like the boss.
mindset of that right now. But that's
All right. Well,
something-
I'm in the mindset of it now because
Well, there's
it
also-
just happened.
Well, yes, but there's also something else that he did say. He also said that abortion's murder. So I think that Thursday is definitely relevant.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna put it out on social media, but Thursday we're gonna have a
Oh,
very
yes.
very big conversation with two of the. I hate saying this, but unfortunately, it's
Don't
just the
say
way.
it. You're going to sound identity-ish,
No,
aren't
it's not identity. That's not what I'm talking about.
you? Okay.
I'm talking about two of the rising stars, if you will.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
In
So,
politics, but
people, we are going to
two
be
very
talking
important voices.
about our continuing battle. Speaking, like, we're still fighting the battle with labor. We're still fighting the battle for reproductive rights. Like, it's 2021, and we're still having this discussion. So we will be having on Jasmine Crockett, who is from the Texas House Legislature, and we will be having on our very own favorite Florida legislator, Anna Escamani, and we will be talking about what this is really going to mean. And I think that people really are not understanding the gravity of the situation because it's really a very big problem. We've been having systematic, basically, war on our reproductive rights from the beginning of time. Like, this has never stopped. But because the Republicans have taken such control of the judiciary, we're in a very scary time. But let's not make any, concessions because the Democrats rubber stamp most of them.
Well, as we said on social media, the GOP's biggest sin is their unholy alliance with the evangelical right. That is why we are where we are. And one would say, well, there's multiple issues with the GOP. Yes, that is true. However,
this one in particular issue might not be being used constantly.
And the evangelical right, they are the ones who have spearheaded getting all of these crazy conservative judges on all of these local, state, and federal spots.
And really, and again, I will say it, the Democrats in many cases were asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but they were. We watched rubber stamping with the exception of Kavanaugh, of a ton of jurists that are really, these are not really jurists. These are not jurists.
You know what? This is like, and again,
these are partisan
it's not
legislators.
To say that there weren't reasons not to have Kavanaugh on the jury, and I know everybody knee jerks to Christine Blasey Ford, but as you like to say, the biggest reason that he shouldn't be on the judiciary is because he has no experience.
I can't. We're talking about him. I can't even.
You even said he's never tried a case.
We have fallen so far. No, I'm not even talking about that. And the same thing applies to Amy Coney Island or whatever her name is.
Coney Island.
Whatever. I don't care. What I'm saying is we have jurists that are not really jurists. And you're right, it has nothing to do with the Christine Blasey Ford, although for what it's worth, I think he's a belligerent addict pig and has some serious anger management problems. And I do believe every word she said, but that is not the problem. The problem is that he is woefully not in the right. He is so out of his league.
Neither is she.
And I can't even, it's like he shouldn't even, I should cover it. Can I cover his ears? But I have to need both hands. It's like, this is a far place we have fallen, people. That man should not. But anyway, so that's, of course, the one people know about because that's our Supreme Court. But this has been happening at every level across the board. And this is how this is going to fly through in Texas and very likely will fly through in some place like Florida as well. And in many states, people don't realize that in many states over the past 15, 20 years, that the access to reproductive care has dwindled down to, in some cases, I believe in the state of Mississippi, there is only one abortion provider for the whole state. So even though it's not made illegal in places, the local municipalities and local governments have come down so hard that they don't exist in places.
That's right.
So this is just one more nail That's what it is. And it's outrageous. And the idea, and apparently though, they're getting hacked and flooded. Their call line with people wanting to sue left and right for people. But apparently everybody from the Uber driver to the doctor and anybody in between that comes into contact with a person having an abortion within the first, 6 weeks, 12
Something
weeks,
like that. Yeah,
12
yeah.
weeks. I don't even know. It doesn't even matter. It's ridiculous. Can be sued.
And we're going to have this conversation.
Yeah. So this is going to be a focus of what we're
Yeah.
talking about Thursday. And also we are talking with Dylan Brown. Is that okay? So Dylan Brown, this is one of the first times I've gotten a referral for a guest. So friend of the show, Lauren Ashcraft.
Biting
Everyone
Commentary, subscribe, like,
check out
watch,
her
and
show,
share.
Biting Commentary. Had Dylan Brown on her show, and she's texted me like that night and said, "Oh my God, you have to have this guy come on your show." So he's a disability advocate. So even though our subject matter in general is not going to be that, we're going to also be talking about that. But so that'll be a separate conversation. I don't see, that can't really all tie. I'm not tying that all together.
But it is very important.
I've learned so many things. And here's another thing. And I will give a plug to one of my favorite YouTube shows, which is Squirmy and Grubs. And if you guys don't watch Squirmy and Grubs, it does not at all what it sounds like it is. I wish that the name is not, but it is about an interabled couple, which I never even knew that term. And I don't like all the I'm not into like all the perfect words and whatever, but it has really helped my understanding and knowledge about certain things that disabled people deal with on a regular basis that we just don't even think about. You don't even think about it. You don't even think, you don't think about, oh my God, it's been a mile on this sidewalk since I've seen the dip that somebody would be able to get a wheelchair off of. We don't think of things like that on a regular basis. But anyway, so.
No, and we obviously.
Shout out to Squirmy and Grubs. I do like
we do take for granted basic health and things that we should have. And that's
disabled people have more health considerations and stuff and have more issues and need, there's just a lot of things that
we need a universal health care. Right?
Well,
this is just so nuts.
it's just off the wall. I feel like all roads on every one of our shows leads to, we need universal health care.
We do. We need it very badly. We need legalized cannabis, apparently. That's another big one.
It's legal for me, but we need it legal for everybody. But the problem is we don't want big pharma control type situation of our weed. So it has to have home grow, and it has to be something where small farmers can participate fairly in the market.
Also have to say, for anybody who's on the political right, now I understand libertarians.
Do we have
like to
anybody on
say-
this show from the political right?
Well, we did.
Who?
Carol Roll.
No. I mean, who's watching us?
Oh, I don't. Well, I'm sure there's some people that jump.
We
on.
have libertarians probably, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say we have political
No, but
right.
what I think is important is that they really are adamant about the Constitution, as am I, and as are you. And again, in the Constitution, in our First Amendment,
That's mine. That's my Constitution.
it says
It's never
the
far.
separation of church and state. It talks about not infringing upon your beliefs. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
If
just to show
somebody
you.
believes in the right to control their own body, your religious beliefs should not be able to infringe upon those rights. I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
So if
yeah.
you're advocating for that, as I've said,
I can't imagine that anybody watching our show is not. I'm such a civil liberties person that the idea that somebody would be.
before we go off the air, guys, Mike Burlingham jumping in with the.
Oh, guys, yeah, check
win.
this out, guys. This is a link to that you can help the Nabisco workers, the Nabisco union, and help out their families, because this is what allows them to be able to strike. They need to have reserves. They need to be able to take care of their union members. So go to this website and it'll show you the different locals that need help. And there's GoFundMe's for the different locals. This is as grassroots as labor. This is as helpful as it could possibly be right now in what we're trying to do.
100%.
And yeah, I mean, I almost wish that, if Graham was a little older and I could just sort of take off, I would almost this would give me my perfect excuse to get
Go
my
to
camper.
Alabama.
I would drive around at all of these things and be protesting at all of these at all of these strikes.
The Alabama is where they are.
Because people need to be coming out for this. This is the kind of thing
Yeah.
where non-union people, just regular people, just work, just other people, even if you're not in a union, even if you're wealthy, even all people should be supporting our workers just because, it's the right thing to do. So I really think that if you're somewhere in any of the places where there is an ongoing strike and you have people on a picket line, go participate in that.
Yeah.
Go participate, show up for your local
When
labor.
I head up to New Jersey,
I wish we had that
plan
here.
on going to Staten Island.
Yeah, I wish there was somewhere here. I really do. I mean, we don't have that here.
Should.
But if you live somewhere where there is a local that is on strike, show up for them. It is really important to show up for them. It really helps. We need to all be showing up for labor.
And so we do what we can here to keep highlighting this very important part of where we go forward. And that, of course, is the labor movement. It really is what we are all about. And knowing what...
I understand what you're saying. Dustin. It is. It's sort of like, in my mind, I think we shouldn't even have to have a minimum wage. Why should we have a minimum wage? We shouldn't if we had worker co-ops and workers were treated fairly and owned the means of their production. Well, no. And even in countries like Finland with strong unions, they don't have a minimum wage because they don't need a minimum wage. No. So I agree. I do think that it is, I don't know that I would call it a socialist Band-Aid. I mean, it's definitely working within what we have as a governance right now. Sort of like how I say I support term limits, even though in theory I'd rather not, but we don't have fair elections. So we're just trying to fix what we can within the system that we have. But I agree. Look, I wish we didn't need you. We shouldn't need that. We should just treat people fairly.
Blue, we're going to have a great show on Thursday. Trust me.
Oh, news and news. We did focus on Florida.
We'll have our news
today.
And news.
I wanted to do bootlicker, but Peter won't let me.
We have a spectacular bootlicker for Thursday.
He won't let me do it tonight, and that's the only reason he's saying that.
Because
right
there's
now.
actually there is a significant
he's trying to make
piece
a link.
Of relevance for Thursday. Because all we're going to say, we're not going to say what he said and why we got him on in the first place. But what we will say is that he is somebody who recently said that abortion is murder. So again, it's none of your damn business. You are not a woman. You cannot bring a child to term.
You know what? For years, I used to think that it just infuriated me when somebody that didn't have female parts would make choices based on female parts. Mm-hmm. But then I found that it actually infuriates me more when somebody with female parts wants to legislate other people with female parts. So while I used to think that men talking on this issue was infuriating, that was before I lived in Texas and had Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson. This was the beginning of my file, if ever I were, because I sent her a scathing letter. And by the way, this was snail mail days.
Was she a Christian conservative?
That senator at the time, when I was living in Texas, she voted for the spousal consent law to require women to get the consent of their spouse to have an abortion. So the letter I wrote, I'm pretty sure that would have been like a foray into whatever lists that I'm on now, because I'm pretty sure I said something about that she should have her uterus removed.
All I can say is that when people want to understand why the GOP has gone where it has gone, and has taken on a completely different identity over the past several decades, just as the Democrats have done something similar. Yes, the Southern strategy did initially start with Nixon and Strom Thurmond in 1968. It did not really come to pass until Reagan took over in 1980. But where it really engulfed the GOP is when the Democratic Party became the party of Wall Street. And so the GOP had to find another path.
They went all evangelical.
Well,
it kind of all happened. It kind of happened in tandem. It happened around the same time.
Well, it did, because it wasn't just the sweeps in 94. What ultimately ended up happening, and one of the reasons why the evangelical right...
Oh, it was way before 94.
Well, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is when they really got their seat at the table was with George W. Bush in 2000. Because of the Lewinsky scandal, it engulfed so much of our society. And the GOP, the conservative Christian right GOP, seized on the opportunity to have their morals and values candidate.
Okay, but the moral majority stuff started, I remember, early 80s.
But Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and even Billy Graham, it was still considered somewhat
No, you had Ralph Reed.
Yes, but
come in with like the whole Christian right. I don't know. I think that it was building up a lot. And then especially
it was, but George W. Bush winning in 2000 is when it went over. That's when it went completely over the mountain. They got the, with all due respect, Mr. Former President, they got the village idiot as the president.
So true.
And it allowed all of these carnival barking Christian, you want to call them Christian fascists. At this point, why wouldn't you call them fascists?
Well, these are like your, I think of these as the people that speak in tongues and they're like snake oil salesmen. That's what they are to me. I mean, they're just snake oil salesmen. That's not truly religious people.
That is 100% correct. And for the very first time, listen, I have listened to Reagan's speeches for years. He was, even though he was in bed with the Christian right, he was nothing like George W. Bush. George W. Bush gets into the White House and talks about how he reads scripture every day and how God talks to him.
He believes literally in the rapture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
you had never had that in the White House before. You had it in the you had it in like the 1800s, but in terms of modern day society, there was no such thing.
Yeah, no.
Even and if you listen to any of Nixon's tapes, he couldn't stand those kinds of people. He did it for political purposes, but he wasn't anything like that. And again, you get a guy like George W. Bush who's
no, don't do it. That's too similar to your Biden. And you know what it is? It's you doing a bad take on the Bush from Harold and Kumar.
I thought that guy, yeah, I guess you're right. Who was the best George? Well, the best George W. Bush impersonator by far is Frank Caliendo. He is the best.
I don't know who that is. So I don't really, can we not? I actually lived in Texas with that person as governor. And then had him as president for 8 years.
They misunderestimated me.
They misunderestimated.
That's still one of my favorites. When the guy threw the shoe at him.
But the thing is, though, he really made the Dan Quayle days just not as entertaining in retrospect.
That's true.
Like he was such a buffoon that it almost I remember thinking that nobody could be more of a buffoon than Dan Quayle.
That is correct, Ricardo. He said it was God's will. You never had a president talk like that before.
Nor should we, people.
No. And so by doing that,
that's called the theocracy.
Yeah. And so when people want to understand like how far we've sunk with the evangelical right, they were always there. But for the past 2 decades, they have run the GOP. This is not even up for debate. Like they run the party. That's why somebody like Mike Pence, who really believes in the rapture, Ted Cruz just plays a rapture believer on TV. That's why because he's such a phony. But Mike Pence really believes that stuff. And he was within a heartbeat or a COVID death of being the president of the United States. And that person would have attempted to install theocratic law in the United States.
And people, it's so interesting to me when you get the Orthodox Jews basically in bed with the evangelical Christians because they're also very pro-Israel. And I feel like telling like fellow tribes people, they don't care about you.
No.
They think you're going to burn in hell. They don't care.
You're the Jesus killers.
Yeah. They don't care about you. You're not on the same team. The only reason they care about Israel is that they need you all to be there for their rapture to happen. That's it.
They
That's
just need
the
you
only
to all
reason.
get there and then drop the atom bomb.
They don't
care. That's basically it.
But it's just, I find it interesting that you see this sort of like, and I have no patience for either of those groups of people, but I just feel like there's like the Jews that somehow think that they're on the same team with those people.
So when corporate media tries to rehabilitate George W. Bush,
he cannot
just understand you're keeping the Christian fascism, if you will. It's still going.
I got to tell you, though, that's one of my lesser concerns with him. He's a war criminal, as is everybody else in his administration. And they should have all been tried for war crimes. But now
they did it in the name of God.
And not only that, and now you've got Condi Rice on The View. That's what happens. Apparently in our country, war criminals don't get tried. They get jobs on The View.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. You kill one person, you're a murderer. You kill 100,000 people, you're a
talk show host.
Yeah.
Well, but let's be real. The same people the same money from the military industrial complex is the same money funding The View. I mean, how much of their advertising is Boeing, Lockheed, all of it,
It's
whatever
all
it is, they own them.
So when people wonder how the state of Texas could possibly do what they did, just understand that it's all about the evangelical right's stranglehold on the GOP.
And we will be speaking with
That is
Jasmine
it.
Crockett, who is a Texas legislator and a badass.
And she'll be able to talk all about it. And
I'm sure she's got a lot to say about this.
And Anna Escamani, who is the best of the best.
She's
when
our
it comes
best in
to-
Florida.
When it comes to a non-corporate legislator in the House, she is definitely
She's our-
somebody who is going to be able to speak to what is ultimately going to come to pass
It
in
is.
Florida, because the GOP is going to, if you want to talk about it,
They're licking their lips.
An evangelical state. Listen,
Can you imagine them looking at Texas right now and being like, "Oh yeah,
yeah, baby, we're
oh,
gonna-
they can't
we're
wait."
gonna bring
Especially
it.
douches like that one, the one in oh God, who's the one that wanted to take away the firefighter pensions? Like, there's so many of these.
Jeff
Brandeis, right?
Yeah.
Some of these guys are licking their lips. Or who's the fanatic, the religious fanatic?
Well, we've got a ton of them, unfortunately.
Oh,
If
my
you
goodness.
guys haven't been to Central Florida or the Panhandle,
And it doesn't mean in Disney World,
no,
right? Like,
We're
you have to
talking
leave.
about-
You have to be outside of the
Yeah.
of Disney World. To
like if you
understand.
like for example, if you go to Vero Beach, which is literally in the center of the state, I was there.
But it's coastal, at least.
It is, but there's a church on every single street corner.
Yeah.
Ricardo coming in hot. Kill one man and you are a murderer. Kill millions of men and you are a conqueror. Kill them all and you are a god.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, and Condoleezza Rice just got her job on The View.
Yeah, well, she's a conqueror. So there you go.
She.
So unfortunately, a lot of people kill in the name of God.
Yeah.
So because of that, we are dealing with that problem on the GOP side. And I have no doubt that there are probably millions upon millions of people who do vote for the GOP, begrudgingly, knowing that those religious crazies are running the party. You're going to tell me that a true non-corporate libertarian wants anything to do with those lunatics that are trying to have the rapture?
I know that
No.
like old school conservative Republicans don't like any of that
No,
nonsense.
not at all.
And I actually
they
worked for
believe in
someone-
that. They truly believe in the separation of church
Yeah,
and state.
I actually worked for a gentleman who was head of Nixon's campaign in South Florida back in
The
for president.
1970s?
Yeah, like no, it was like
68, 72.
72. And he is a shareholder at a firm that I worked for when I was working in Miami. And I remember that how he felt about W and the administration and the war and the
Oh, yeah, I
spending.
can only imagine.
And he was livid. Like, he's like, this isn't my party. I don't know who these people are. So, I just, there is that mindset, but they're still not going to go with the Democrats. And let's just say if the Republicans are selling their soul for, to the evangelicals, the Democrats have sold it to corporations. So.
Yeah. And look, unfortunately, religion for a very long time had a very strong hold, and it had a very strong hold in the Democratic Party for a very long time. So this isn't, there's a reason why it was called the Democratic South for as long as it was. This has always been a problem, but it has. I can't really say, and I really have to dig deep into our history as to whether or not the Democratic Party at any point was completely engulfed by the evangelicals and the just completely over the top Protestants. I can't say for certain if that's ever been the case, but I can absolutely say with certainty that in my lifetime, since George W. Bush has been president, for the past 2 decades, the GOP at the tippy top is run by the evangelical right. I don't think there's really any debate here.
No, it's
And
true.
so that's a big problem. And that is something we will highlight on Thursday.
It's a combination of the evangelical right and the military industrial complex
Oh, yeah.
and the deep state. It's like a perfect storm of
Well,
evil.
they've always tied those two things together.
They're all together.
So much in the South and in the heartland and places where there isn't a lot of economic opportunity outside of major cityscapes, because we are a centralized, planned country. Unfortunately, you have a lot of people in poverty that all play into, the church is the center of town, and then the military comes in and gets them to join, and they basically are convincing you that it's God's will. So again, it's a very big problem. but one that we will highlight on
I'm
Thursday.
going to get you a
So-
contact high whether it kills me. You know what?
With that said,
You know, did I ever tell you that how I found Kyle Kalinske in the first place? Because I started watching him. It was unrelated to politics, really. I actually found him because the name of his show.
Yeah.
And that the religion thing and being is very important to me. And I've always really
and he's Catholic. And the thing about Catholics is that they are much more, you know, because I grew up in a very Catholic area, and they very much are. They're very much for the church, but they're not preachy. They're not like that. The evangelicals
that's a prot thing.
are preachy.
Shout out to Matthew Brown.
Yeah, they want you. They want you to know that if you do not accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior on the day of your death, you will go to hell. That is, they want you to know that, and that is mass manipulation on a global scale. But it is still very much a very important part of where our country is. And if you think it's bad here, you should see what goes on in Southeast Asia and Africa.
How do you know what's going on there?
Well, Vice did a special on this a number of years ago, just highlighting. And I have always said that one of the absolute worst representatives we have in this country, bar none, is Senator James Inhofe from Oklahoma. And if you want to talk about the most fanatical Christian right senator that we have, this is a guy who goes on missions trips to Africa to religiously convert people.
Well, that's a Western religion is universalizing, and that's all of them. I'm sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
They're universalizing. They
but
like to
he
spread
actually
their word.
goes on these trips.
I know a lot of people that have done mission work.
No,
and
but I'm telling you, if you see what he was into,
I've spent an inordinate amount of time with Catholics in my life for a Jewish person.
But that's not Catholic.
No, I understand.
Catholicism.
But people do mission work. People do things
That's
like that.
true, but Catholics are really not known for that. That's more.
No.
Mormons are more into that. Evangelicals do that.
Mormons, the LDS, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And if you are in the Church of Scientology, I don't even want to have a conversation.
You think we have any Scientologists?
Unfortunately, I think we may have had.
I
some
can't
on the
imagine
show.
we have Scientologists.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
No, I mean, like in our group.
Oh, no.
You think we have that's what I'm saying. Like, you think I've got Scientology followers? I can't imagine.
I don't think so. But we really appreciate
if
you
you
guys.
are, get out. It's crazy.
We know that this was not exactly the night to do a podcast. I know we didn't have a huge audience, but for those of you that were here, we really appreciate you all coming on. And cheese sandwich, yes, the growth of the religious right is a symptom of the neoliberalism. I agree. Because of the Democrats' conversion,
they're symbiotic
into the Wall Street Party. The GOP, remember, with the GOP,
they were the corporate party.
They still are, but
Yeah.
not to the extent that they once were. But what is it about the GOP that makes them different than the Democrats? The GOP will win by any means necessary.
And they come together.
Yeah.
They also campaign year round.
Yeah. And if that means that they have to get in bed with the crazy religious right, then they're going to do that.
Right.
If it means they're going to keep power.
And you've got Democrats that won't even let other Democrats come to their event because they don't agree with them on this, that, and the other. So that is why the Republicans win.
Yeah, that's
Why.
Big part of it.
And why we can't have nice things.
We're looking forward to Thursday. Happy Labor Day. Solidarity to all workers in the United States and around the world. We'll see you Thursday.